So Noni Madueke is joining Arsenal. As I speak, the latest from Fabrizio Romano is that he has completed the first stage of his medical, is set to complete the second stage, and he is undoubtedly going to become an Arsenal player. And look, we're going to talk about it rationally. We're going to talk about why Arsenal have moved for him, where he fits in, what he does genuinely add to this squad. But of course, we will also factor in the fee and whether or not it was the highest priority this window. Before we get into it, if I could just ask you to subscribe. We're less than 400 subscribers away from 21,000 subscribers. And if you could like the video as well, I would be massively grateful as I nearly destroyed the entire setup. It's roasting hot still, so if I am perspirating at quite a rate of knots, I do apologize. But look, without further ado, let's get into it. And we have to start here. We have to start at the fee because it's the biggest talking point of this deal. I think it's the biggest drawback to the deal. I don't actually think if you broke it down to the player itself, the move itself, people would be as worked up as they are about this. But the fee just seemed large for what the player is, especially when we look at where he's coming into this Arsenal squad. Now, 52 million was what David Ornstein said before the deal had quite been finalised. Tom Canton then said, along with Sky Sports, I believe, that the breakdown is 48.5 million plus 3.5 in add-ons. Now, when it first came out that this was going to be 50 million plus, I was certain that for it to make sense for us, this was going to be like 35 million in a fixed fee and like 17 in add-ons, right? And lots of add-ons you don't mind, because if they're tied to winning things, then it becomes worth it anyway. That really surprised me when it came out that it's such a high fixed fee and relatively little add-ons. Now, Tom Canton said Arsenal see the fee as well negotiated, considering those of other top-flight wingers moving in this market, and we'll talk about that. And that Arteta obviously wants a new striker on the plane to Asia, so that ties into, the priority of this signing as well. But there has to be a reason that we've gone for it, right? Fundamentally, there was no reason for us to move for Noni Madueke as quickly as we did, because he's not even going to be able to play for us for the next 3 weeks. He's going to go on holiday. He has to. He's not had one. So he's going to have to go. So there was no reason for us to do it quickly. There was every reason for Chelsea to do it quickly, because they have to meet a deadline with UEFA where they needed to raise about 60 million quid. So why? What possibly could we have been motivated by to get this deal through? Well, if you look at what's happening with Victor Gyökeres and the fact that the deal for him still hasn't gone through, they are negotiating over like 5 million euros right now. The latest was that basically Arsenal want to pay 65 million euros and then some add-ons. Sporting wants 70 million euros up front and don't care about the add-ons. Sorry, not up front, but as a fixed fee, but they don't care about the add-ons. Now, that is marginal, right? That is so marginal for a player that we desperately need. So what I actually think it comes down to is the payment structure. And that is something Arsenal have been massively fixated on for years. It's how the payments are paid. So do you get to pay them over 3, 4, 5 years in smaller installments? With Zubimendi as an example, we went above his release clause to get favourable payment terms. It means that we can pay more this window. And if you look at it, Chelsea don't need the actual money. They've got plenty of money, cash. They don't need that. They just needed the big fee on the books. Whereas Arsenal have a bit of a cash flow issue. We don't have a PSR issue, but in terms of having the actual money to give to other clubs, unless the Cronkies want to invest more, then we don't have that. So it may well be that this is the only logical explanation I have for us making a move at that fee, is that the payment structure is very favourable. Now, I don't have official information on that, but I just physically cannot see another reason. Unless people say they're blackmailing us or something, which is conspiracy that I don't subscribe to. So for me, it has to be that this was simply a deal that Arsenal couldn't turn down for us to move as quickly as we did. I hope, at the very least, that is the case. But when you do compare it to other moves this summer, from Chelsea's perspective, I can understand 52 million pounds as a price tag. When you look at Kudus going for 55, when you look at Elanga going for 55, Madueke is in a similar bracket. Age profile, what he adds to a team, the fact that he's done it at Chelsea, who are a better club that made it into the Champions League. Like, I get it from their perspective. The question becomes, from our perspective, is that the best use of 52 million quid? And that's where you've got the opportunity cost. Could we have spent that money differently for a better outcome? And we will not know the answer to that until the end of this transfer window. We simply won't. But if we get to the end of the transfer window and we've missed out on a player because we couldn't afford to go for them, and maybe we were 10 million short, I guess we'll never know the truth of that. But like, you understand what I'm saying. We can't say for certain until the end of the window. Now, all of that aside, conclusion, I think the fee is too big. Time will tell. What does he actually add to the team? Depth and balance. It is fun. Is what I think he adds to the team. Now, if you look at the actual current group of attacking players that we've got, Trossard, Havertz, Jesus, Nelson, Martinelli, Saka. Reece Nelson almost certainly set to leave. Leandro Trossard sounds like he could be on the way out. Arsenal are certainly open to it. No progression so far on contract talks. Trossard himself got a new agent at the start of this month, which you don't typically do if you're not looking for a move away. And Jesus, who is injured, will be injured at the start of the season, and we don't know the exact timeline of him returning, and we don't know if, when he does return, he will be able to play at the top level. That leaves you going into next season, as it stands, with Kai Havertz, Gabriel Martinelli, and Bukayo Saka, and Ethan Nwaneri if you consider him as a forward option. That is incredibly light. Even if you compare that to last season, with Sterling at least coming in, you are in a position where you need to go out and buy 3 attackers minimum. And so that is where I don't think we're stopping at Madueke and Victor Gyökeres. I think there will be at least one more. As I was saying, Arsenal willing to let Leandro Trossard leave after he agreed to personal terms with Fenerbahce. We're still waiting for them to actually put an offer on the table. Came out today from some sources in Germany that Leandro Trossard is on the radar of Bayern Munich if they fail to get Luis Diaz over the line. And interestingly, Trossard's new agency is German-based. And of course, he's Belgian alongside Vincent Kompany. So look, maybe he leaves. And if he does, I think we bring Eze in. And the links to Eze are still going strong. Still definitely sounds like on top of Madueke, we're going for Eze. And so where does that leave you? Well, I think it leaves you here. Shout out to PB Football. He made this little sort of graphic, which I think is good because it shows you sort of the positional areas that our players occupy. Now, the ones that are highlighted red are the ones that of that group I would start in any given game. Look, whether you'd start Martinelli ahead of Eze off the left, if you don't think Eze is good enough as a left winger, whatever. This is just as an example. But what I think bringing in Madueke does is it balances out that set. If you took Madueke out of there, you're once again left in a position where you're really reliant on Bukayo Saka. Nwaneri, we've heard time and time again now, is being seen as a central player, and he is now close to signing a new deal, which, given that we've moved forward with Madueke, suggests that his game time was not linked to Madueke. It's more than likely linked to Martin Odegaard and a central role. And so I think if you put Madueke there, and you say he can also play off the left-hand side, that does improve the depth of the squad, undoubtedly. One thing I would say, however, is I've seen a lot of people saying that it adds a load of left-wing depth, right? That almost he's come in as backup for Saka, but then he'll play on the left-hand side. He's not played a huge amount on the left, far less than I think people actually appreciate. Now, this from Transfer Market is generally based on where they start a game. So there will have been games, of course, where Madueke will have moved to the left during the game. But as a general rule, he started 11 games off the left. And so it's actually difficult even to find a huge amount of footage of him playing off the left-hand side to judge just how good he is playing there. And we'll come back to him playing off the left-hand side in a little minute. But in terms of what he adds, on top of the depth, like I've said, where I do think, by the way, off that right-hand side, we have lacked someone that is a left-footed right winger that plays similarly to Bukayo Saka. Nwaneri kind of did it. Didn't quite have the physicality, in my opinion. Madueke has that. And if we do look at the stats where Madueke thrives as a player, some of these stats are quite interesting. So he's in the 97th percentile for progressive carries. That is something that we have lacked. We have lacked someone who picks up the ball and runs directly with it. And he's very good at that. He's in the 94th percentile for successful dribbles. Again, he is very good at that. 93rd percentile for non-penalty expected goals and assists. That's very good. That is showing you that at the very least, he's getting in the positions or setting up the positions for your team to score goals from. 77th percentile for accurate crosses, not too bad. 78th for non-penalty goals, not too bad. And then if you do compare that to wingers in the Premier League per 90 last season, ball carrying frequency, second. He is going to pick up the ball and he is going to run with it. Expected goals, third. Now, we'll look a bit more detail as to where those expected goals end up, but that is good fundamentally. He's getting himself into positions to score goals. It helps that he was playing in a team that created a lot of opportunities and were, generally speaking, a good attacking team last season outside of finishing. Progressive carries, third. Touches in the box, third. Progressive action rate, third. Ultimately, what you're getting with Noni Madueke is a player that is going to do something, right? And how many times have we seen, as an example, Martinelli get the ball on the wing and end up going nowhere? Quite often. So this is the downside. Noni Madueke scored 7 goals from 11.75 XG last season. Second biggest underperformance of any Premier League player. Now, some will say the fact that he got 11.75 XG in the first place is a really good sign. And the fact that he only scored 7 of them is something that can be worked on. I would agree. I would also say, I think I looked on FOTMob and the XG was actually closer to 9 rather than 11.75. But what I did find interesting was this. This was from Canon Stats. If you look over the course of multiple seasons rather than just last season, this shows the grey bars are the XG for quality of chances, and the red bars are how many he scored from them, right? So on the left-hand side there, if you can't see the numbers at the bottom, the furthest bars left, the grey and the red bar, are for 0 to 5% XG chances. So the lowest quality chances, the ones that you're least likely to score from. He's nearly doubled the number of goals he scores from those types of chances. So that is an example of turning nothing into something. Small quality chances and scoring from them. That is useful. Again, that, when we're struggling to break teams down, finding just a moment of magic, that is useful. You go up to 5 to 20% chances, slightly performs above his expected XG. 20 to 40% chances is the only one where he slightly underperforms. And then 40% chances plus, he overperforms. So over the course of his career, he overperforms on his XG. He doesn't underperform on his XG over the course of his career. And the fact that his actual XG is really strong for a winger in the Premier League, I generally think that that is a good sign. So for me, there are stats that look like, if you're bringing him off the bench for Saka or he's starting games, I do think he will provide a threat. There are definitely things he needs to work on, of course. I think some of his passing can be lazy. I think some of his general gameplay can be lazy. But these are kind of the highlights, the good parts of what he offers. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is this idea of him playing on the left-hand side. And like I said, there aren't many examples you can find of it. This is actually from the under-21 Euros. I think this is him playing for England's under-21s. But I found this clip interesting, right? So he is excellent at standing up a defender. You can see he's standing up his right back here. And these are the sorts of situations where with Trossard and Martinelli, we run into issues. Trossard often doesn't have the athleticism to get past his man. Trossard's very good at going left foot or right foot. He's unpredictable. He can go down onto his left, whip a ball across. He's very two-footed. That's what I like about him. But against a good fullback, he struggles to get past them because he doesn't have that explosive pace. Martinelli does have that explosive pace, but he's a bit of a road runner, gets his head down, doesn't look up for the pass, and feels a little bit one-dimensional. You can kind of tell when he's about to try and take it past you down the line. Whereas with Madueke, at least in the examples that I saw, he provides more of a threat. I think he provides more of a threat. And in this example, if you look at where he stood here, within 3 or 4 strides, he's completely done his defender, the right back. He's left his right back in the dust. He's run inside. And then here he plays a lovely little through ball into Jacob Ramsey on Ramsey's left foot, and he finishes it. It's a fantastic assist. And from the right-hand side, what you would expect Madueke to do here, more often than not, would be to cut in onto his left, as he's done here. He's cut in, but onto his right, and then shoot. But because this is on his right, he's almost got more of a propensity at this point to try and be creative. And that was what I was getting. There was a real creator when he's playing on the left-hand side. And there were as many examples where he goes down the left-hand side and fizzes a ball across. And because he's got that athleticism to get away from his defender, he's very good at it. So I do think that there's a real opportunity for Madueke to come into the team, put in the price tag aside, and improve the level of the squad. Fundamentally, he's a massive improvement on Raheem Sterling, which is what we had last season. I think he's a better player than Reece Nelson. I think the fact that he's left-footed offers something different to Reece Nelson. And I also think that if we do bring in Martinelli, Eze, and Madueke, it gives us that element of unpredictability. Something that Mikel Arteta has screamed for is unpredictability. For years, he's spoken about that. And I think last year we were beginning to get into a position, not in the attack, but with the midfield and defence, where we could have that level of unpredictability. And then we were just absolutely riddled with injuries. And that kind of stopped us having that ability. But you imagine going into a game next season, especially against a bottom half of the table side, where they're expected to set up in a low block or whatever, and they've got a full week to prepare for it. If we could go into that game and the opposition don't know whether you're going to have Martinelli, a touchline right-footed left winger, Eze, more of a central ball carrier, very two-footed, or Madueke, a left-footed winger who could go either way. If you don't know which of those three is going to play, that is really difficult to prepare for. And that is the sort of unpredictability that I think we're crying out for. So he adds depth. He adds balance. If Saka gets injured, the value of this signing will suddenly increase massively. Is he the best on the market that we could have got? Not so sure. Were there many other left-footed right wingers available? Not a huge amount. Will I give him the time? Absolutely. Will I get behind him? Absolutely. Does the price tag matter now that we've signed him? No. It's done. It's dusted. Is it his fault that he's got that price tag? Absolutely not. And so, look, I think at this point we've just got to trust that the club know what they're doing. Trust that Arteta knows what he's doing. Trust that there is a plan in place. I can't imagine that he's just going to come in as a Saka backup and nothing else, and that there's not a plan for him to play off the left, because that is a huge amount of money to spend on an outright backup for a player who, in any sort of significant game, in Saka would be expected to start. And if you look at when we spent big money on Kai Havertz, who wasn't necessarily coming in to start, there was versatility there. And that was what added to his value. So we'll wait and see. There are pros, there are cons. This video is more meant to highlight like the pros as to why we've bought him. There are also many cons. And I hope that we don't see too many of them. I mean, one of them is attitude. We'll wait and see how that goes. I do think Arteta is a good judge of character. We've not bought anyone in really under Arteta who's had a bad personality or added sort of a bad vibe to the camp. So I'd be surprised if they got that wrong. And I think it's an easy way to create a narrative about a player when you don't want them or when they're not playing well for you, as has been at Chelsea, where you just get bad attitude. So I wouldn't buy into the whole bad attitude thing. I do think there are issues with consistency of his performances, and that's something he needs to work on. But he is still young. So, look, we'll give it a chance. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please do like, please do subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow, Monday, with at least a live stream, possibly another video as well. If anything breaks, we will go live. Make sure you got your notifications turned on so you always know when. Discord's down below if you want to continue the Arsenal chat. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your weekend if you're watching this on Sunday as I post it. And other than that, I will catch you all on the next one. Until then, goodbye.